Hello, this is Mr. Mac. We're going to talk about motifs in literature. We're using the Crucible. You could think about any, you know, longer text that you have to analyze, but this is a helpful literary term. Maybe it's an element that you can work into. You notice something, you work it into a larger analysis of an entire novel's theme or something like that. Um, so we'll get started. Basic definition is the place to start here. Um, all a motif is, you may have heard this word before, maybe in a literary analysis context or not, uh, but it's just something that repeats itself in a literary work, and it can be confused with theme and stuff like that. We're going to talk about that. But these are things that you need to be noticing as you are reading a text, as we're looking for, ooh, this quote is kind of important, or this is a really important scene between these two characters. Why does he keep using this word over and over, or whatever the case may be, or see how the author is describing the landscape. Once again, he's drawing your attention to fill in the blank, right? Um, whether it's imagery or a type of even like climactic events or something in some novels. um, so what are these recurring elements? I'm always asking you to look for patterns. Motif is just another word you can use in your toolkit to notice patterns, to see how they build on one another, and to see how authors use them in their artistic vision and their critical vision for a work as a whole. So we'll ask, what are potential motifs in the Crucible, and just because it's nice to have an example, and that's the work that we are currently looking at in my class. So yeah, it can be that simple, a recurring element. And maybe you've heard this word motif. Maybe you've heard it in design. That's where I kind of first heard about motif. It's a design element. There's like that Greek meander there in the upper right. But you have these, maybe it's a floral motif. It could be kind of formal, like this is a tradition in some school of design, or it could just be like, hey, we want to repeat this pattern in a room or in architecture. Other art, visual artwork. They are a repeated pattern, maybe even a color motif. We're going to have several elements in this room that are green. Yeah, I'm looking at this picture here or whatever. And But there could be specific designs. Some of you in orchestra or the musically inclined among us, you've heard of leitmotifs. Okay, that is. Sometimes they're associated, often I think, associated with characters in opera. So this is, they're really famous in Wagner's Ring Cycles and stuff like that, where it's a tune, it's a repeated tune every time this character comes on stage or something like that. There might be different, arrangements or something like that going on, but it's all like this character has his or her tune, right? It's a leitmotif, and I think even that term was something that we've seen in Szymborska's poetry. um, anyway, we're talking about in artwork, an artist might repeat something in order to have a given effect. That's the bottom line here. Authors do it too, right? Um, so we're contributing generally towards the development of a theme. Sometimes there's some overlap between motif and theme. If in doubt, you probably just want to shoot towards in a paper, analyze the theme, and you could even in a phrase talk about, this pattern of recurring. You're talking about this symbol or the color blue, or the way that the character is always obsessed with his or her name. And we see this quote, this quote, this quote, this quote, or this in this chapter, this scene, and in 3 chapters later, we return to this, or every time that we get into this setting or this character's dwelling place or whatever, the author is drawing our attention to this detail, and that sort of thing is repeated. Why is an author doing this? You're not going to really include it in a paper unless it's contributing to an overall message, a central idea, a critical commentary about what the work is doing as a whole. Or even just it could be as simple as part of the author's aesthetics. But pay attention to this note here. I'll just read it. Motif and theme are linked in a literary work, but there is a difference between them. And our taxonomy can get a little bit sloppy, but a theme is that central idea or message, while a motif is just a repeated element. This is a cool visual. It's not perfect. Again, kind of sloppy taxonomy. Sometimes people want to differentiate between what's a motif and what's a symbol, and that could be helpful. But in terms of you as a student writing a paper, if you're going to use one of these terms as a way to articulate how you're following a pattern, a conceptual progression in a work of literature or something like that, I would just pay attention to the those blue items, right? This is helpful. We talk a lot in class about concrete and abstract uh, elements, but you're looking for stuff, any type of element that an author might be using over and over in a work, and to build on a central idea, or to say something. And again, this is all abstract. This is an interesting visual to get you thinking about, even uh, from the emotions of certain characters to the settings to different colors or the weather. Um, Even if there's a lot of classical allusions to Greek and Roman literature, or biblical allusions, and or to pop culture. Okay, so those sort of things repeated over and over, authors are doing something with them. Look out for them. Helpful to have some examples here for the Crucible. Okay, could be more tangible ideas like the birds, or even when a character is talking about I want to fly, or the accusations or the rumors of flying. Looking at the second bullet point there, it can be more abstract, like the idea of fidelity or faithfulness. There, second to last bullet point. Um, Anyway, a lot of these are veering into themes, but you would want to articulate them as theme statements, like if we really want to develop them fully as themes. However, if you've gotten into the Crucible at any depth, you know that these are at least potentials of things that Arthur Miller, in this case, is repeating over and over, and is doing something right in terms of the whole breadth of the play. So I guess I've been saying novel a lot. Obviously, any longer work of literature. Crucible is a play, not a novel. You get the idea here, right? Um, so how do I know if something is a motif, if it's appropriate to use that word in my analysis to identify and describe the development of a pattern in literature? Of course, it has to be a pattern, right? A recurring element. It should, this is just probably don't need to include it in a paper. It's not worth the ink if you're not talking about how it creates meaning, broadly speaking. Just like, oh, here's an element of that gets repeated. Like, well, okay, great. How's it working together? Anybody can identify a pattern, but talking about how it works shows that you actually understand the work as a whole. That's what analysis is. Um, the parts in relationship to the whole. You also need to be able to cite it, right? A lot of times these are little moments of dialogue, at least in a play like The Crucible, right? It happens. It doesn't just happen. It's not on accident. The author's purposeful, but it just happens that this character is talking, about this element, a face, or um, the idea of judgment, I mean, judging others, or something like that, or coldness, like temperature. I'm just thinking through some basics that you'll see even by Act Two in The Crucible, or my own name, right? The name in the village. Um, so you want to be looking for those patterns, right? And then the rule of three. This is kind of borrowed from design, but in any artwork, do we know if this is really the author's intent or something like that, or is this a coherent pattern? See if you can find it three times, right? And say, like, if you're designing an interior space, I guess I am told. Um, if you want something to be a motif or a pattern, that helps unify a space, or be pleasing to the eye in some way, you need to have at least three distinct elements, right? So maybe it's like natural wood or something. You have the floor, you're going to have this light stand, have some natural wood, or this piece of furniture, and this windowsill or something. I don't know. You need at least three elements for it to be a pattern that's recognizable, that the human eye picks up on, and it achieves that sort of sense of unity that the artist would go for. So same in literature, like if you can't find three different examples that you're citing over the course of a text, again, doesn't necessarily have to be a quote. You could be paraphrasing details, but if you can't find at least three examples, probably not going to use the word motif, um, and may not be really an intentional pattern. You might be kind of fishing for something there. So anyway, so be thinking about this. Again, I'm telling you, always reading for patterns. And now what's the author doing? with this. This is not the end. Finding a motif is not the end all of analysis, right? You're going to talk about how that motif contributes to the overall artistic vision, or what the author is trying to accomplish with the work as a whole, the development of a central idea in the text, right? A theme that you'd articulate as a phrase, or an idea or a question that the author is asking those of us who read it or watch the play or whatever to wrestle with. See if you can come up with something and find textual evidence, right? I gave you a long list on this slide. See if you can find some textual evidence and start looking for patterns as you continue to read in the play. And you can bring those into our discussions. All right, that's it.